The question for us isn't did you do it? We know that you did it. The question for us is, why?
Do you ever wonder why you do the things you do? Were you just born this way? Or have your experiences molded the way you think, feel, and act? We all have instincts, intuition, and feelings that guide our decision making. But are you in control of them, or are they in control of you? Netflix's Mindhunter investigates the dark underbelly of human psychology, the destructive instinct that drives criminals to commit despicable acts against their fellow man. You're probably familiar with the quote, "How you do anything is how you do everything," suggesting that the small decisions we make each day contribute to a larger picture of who we are. But these little choices also place us on a path that's leading somewhere unknown. But what if you're being led towards something destructive? On some level, we often are, as we all have vices. That uninvited impulse that pushes us towards food, drink, drugs, lust, greed, power, conflict, control. We may wish it wasn't there, try to silence it, manage it, but we're always aware of its presence, tempting us to give in. However, what's so bizarre is that we all host different voices with different appetites, and we don't seem to get to choose what that voice craves the most. We're just duty-bound to fight against it to protect ourselves and others. But what about those who have darker depths to them, whose destructive voice has higher volume than the rest of us? Was this instinct always just inside them, or did life's many possibilities plant it there and over time nourish it? In essence,
are criminals born? Or are they formed?
So with that in mind, let's take a deeper look at the key themes of Mindhunter to see how it tackles the fascinating debate of nature versus nurture. The first key is the killer's relationship with their parents. Now, of course, there's no one-size-fits-all here, but the series suggests that a common pattern among serial killers is that they're typically male, have an absent father, and a domineering mother, which does make sense. If a young boy has no positive father figure to model themselves off, and an antagonistic mother figure who needs to be overcome, then they never experience a healthy, nurturing relationship from either men or women. Therefore, they develop a hatred for what they never had and a resentment of what they're stuck with. For example, Ed Kemper's mother had nothing but contempt, disappointment, and disdain for him. His father's absence made her hate men, and her son's physical resemblance to the source of her pain made him an easy target. Anything that ever went wrong in her life was all his fault, leading her son to violently lash out and even rip out her vocal cords. According to Kemper, a mother should never routinely humiliate her son, otherwise he'll inevitably become hostile, violent, and debased. A theory that we then see come to life with Dwight, whose mother constantly talks down to him like he's a burden. But because he can't fight back against her, as he relies on her for a roof over his head, he takes his frustrations out on other innocent women who physically resemble his mother. On the face of it, it's a simple case of projection, but it also suggests that their dark voice is welded into a weapon to attack its greatest enemy, as if each voice is fine-tuned to its unique surroundings. The series shows us this time and time again, whether it's David Berkowitz, whose mother never wanted him and put him up for adoption, which leads him to target women who are out late at night so that they won't have more unwanted children like him. Or Jerry Brudos, whose mother wanted a daughter instead of a son, and as a knock-on effect, he develops a fascination with women's shoes, and begins punishing girls who aspire to model, as modeling is a way to show off their natural femininity. It's all self-hatred, it's jealousy, a bitterness for what they are and what they can never be. So in this way, Mindhunter suggests that a foundation of feeling unwanted by a primary caregiver can lead to a weaker sense of shared humanity, which over time can graduate to depraved behavior, a strong argument for nurture. However, obviously not everyone who's born into bad circumstances or to bad parents turns into a violent psychopath. So then what's the missing piece of the puzzle? If you put 10 people into identical circumstances for their whole life, their outcomes still wouldn't be the same. So there must be something to be said for each individual's unique genetic makeup, their nature. As let's face it, we are mostly getting the criminal side of the story here, how they were victimized by their own mothers in some way. But what if it's not that simple? What if it's that their mothers sensed something off about their child, like seeing them decapitating dolls or harming animals, which then caused them to become more domineering as a means of control?
And my mother would yell and scream at me, tell me I was sick. She thought I was going to do something hideous one day.
This then creates a vicious cycle. The original behavior leads to a natural need to control the subject, which then creates this even stronger reaction to want to break free and take total control for themselves. Except now they're armed with this victim narrative, as that helps them justify their base desires. The most interesting example of the series is Bill's son Brian, who technically fits the profile. He was adopted when he was 3, so in theory anything could have happened to him before then that desensitized him to violence, as when he witnesses older boys killing a child in front of him, he never intervened or even told anyone what happened. In fact, it was his idea to put the boy on a cross. Now maybe it's nothing, maybe he's just an innocent child who didn't understand what he was seeing. Or maybe he was born different. Or maybe his father's constant absence, coupled with the abandonment of his birth mother, has put Brian on a path. Because if you think about it, if in 20 years Brian became a serial killer, would he not have his own victim narrative to explain his behavior? Perhaps even noting that his father paying more attention to killers than to him created a perverse incentive structure, where those who lash out at others are more worthy of attention than those who don't. Which leads us into the second key, outside influences. All of us are vulnerable to the power of influence. If we weren't, advertising wouldn't exist. But can we be influenced to do something that was never in our nature to begin with? Or are we all born with seeds of everything, and certain spots just get watered more than others? Mindhunter explores this idea through the Manson murders, as Charles Manson famously never killed any of his victims, but instead manipulated his followers into doing it for him. Tex claims that by making his followers believe that these were the last days on Earth, their manipulator enabled them to embolden the darkest parts of themselves, posing the question, what crimes might you commit if there were no consequences? Is the potential punishment the only thing holding you back from becoming your worst self? After Tex proclaims that now because he's confessed to his sins he'll be redeemed by God, Wendy concludes that he's just exchanged one belief system with another. Which is an interesting observation, that our belief systems, whether they be personal, political, or religious, enable certain behaviors in the name of something greater. They condition us to prioritize specific actions and even people over others. So the more we believe in something, the more we act on its behalf, replacing our personal morality in service of the belief systems. Or is it the opposite? Do we just want to exercise certain impulses, and the belief system is a mere cover story that shields us from responsibility while enabling our true desires, as Wendy concludes with the Mansons?
But primarily people with untapped potential. People who only had to have their fear removed to do what they did. He simply helped them be who they were.
The truth can be hard to pin down, because what we want to believe about individuals, and by extension ourselves, tends to colour our thinking. For instance, the reason why Bill becomes much more defensive of the Manson family or Elmer Henley isn't because he's championing their cause, but because he's projecting. He needs to believe that his son is still innocent, despite serving as an accomplice in that boy's death. He needs to find someone else to blame because the alternative is too terrifying. Either his son was born like this, or he helped make him like this. The problem with the nurture argument is that killers love shirking responsibility for their actions, and this helps to place blame at more than one person's feet. Anything, no matter how big or small, how intentional or inadvertent, could theoretically contribute to someone else's downfall. Yet it's unlikely to have that effect most of the time. But every 1 in 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 could react differently. The same can be said for how the media covers these stories. For most viewers, it's just information and entertainment. But the sensationalist coverage increases the likelihood of copycats, and allows the killers to create their own mythology. The media is essentially handing them a blank canvas to paint their masterpiece on for the world to see. This way, if they don't like who they are or the direction of their life, they can now be in control of rewriting their own story, where instead of being dismissed, they're rebranded as cunning, intelligent, and somehow masterful for escaping capture for as long as they do. And where instead of being ignored, they're now overwhelmed with attention, all of which will have a unique appeal to people with emotionally impoverished backgrounds. And that leads us to our final key, hiding their true identity. Mindhunter puts a large focus on the killer's secret self, the dark side they tried to conceal and contain until it took over. And the question is always, how could someone as wicked as this be walking among us? How did we not spot it sooner? But the truth is that humans are masters of deception, or at least deception by omission. We all have parts of ourselves we conceal, even for harmless reasons, some big, some small. For example, Wendy has different masks for different groups. Some people don't know she's a lesbian, others don't know she works with the FBI, despite these being pretty significant details about her identity.
Exactly. You can't be yourself. Are you really going to hide half of your life?
I do that here.
Everyone has a public and private self, and we typically enable the filtration system of how much someone needs to know about us to fulfill certain roles. A stranger isn't granted the same level of access as a best friend, and certain family members may know things that your friends will never find out. Our public personas are somewhat malleable, they adapt and change, whereas our private self is an amalgamation of everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. When it comes to serial killers, we like to believe that they're just monsters. It's both comforting and terrifying to think that way. But from their perspective, they're just following their instincts as mysteriously as they arise, the same as you. Just like you might spot someone you're drawn to and don't know why, they latch onto a target and can't stop thinking about them. Just like when you want something in life, it starts with a thought, snowballs into a plan, and then transforms into an action, their violent fantasies follow a similar trajectory. And just like we feel sentimental about certain people, places, and objects, they return to the scene of the crime to relive the experience, and even collect souvenirs to relish in the memory of what they've done. As just like us, they like trophies to mark their accomplishments. The only difference is what they desire, not how it consumes them until they get it.
This person you're after, he has an overwhelming fantasy life. These dreams will consume him. Soon the real world won't even compare.
Mindhunter gets to the heart of the nature-nurture question by subtly examining the mysteriousness of preference, inclination, and attraction. Why are we instinctively drawn to certain behaviors and not others? Why do some things turn us on while others turn us off? Why is someone like Holden so obsessed with understanding serial killers, even though he isn't one himself? Why does Bill habitually smoke cigarettes? Why didn't Brian tell anyone what happened? Why do these killers act the way they do, hunt the way they hunt, speak the way they speak? Is it all chasing a sense of control, a coping mechanism? Most of us don't even question where our preferences come from, as they're just harmless features of our personality. It's only when things go wrong that suddenly they need to be examined more thoroughly. Maybe we are all blank slates, and our outcomes are all down to childhood trauma, the values instilled in us, and the precise way in which we become exposed to certain ideas. But given that if you put any group of people through the exact same experience, they won't all end up the same, nature just has to play a role in our behavior. Nurture explains what we experience, but not how we perceive it. As while there is darkness in all of us, our capacity for brutality is not equally distributed. Most of us would need to be pushed hard for it to ever surface. But for others, if they're dealt the wrong cards, or just given the right excuse, it won't be a last resort, but a primal instinct. And in some cases, even a preference. Well, if you've made it this far, firstly, thank you for watching, but if you could now give the video a like, possibly even leave a comment and click on that subscribe button, it will encourage that mysterious algorithm to do its thing.